So my name's Michelle Moser. I own Maker's Compounding Pharmacy. I think everybody knows that by now. And tonight we're going to talk about men's health. So andropause is the official name for aging in men that has a wide variety of symptoms associated with that. Andropause is technically the relationship between hormone levels and as they decline as we age. Specifically, some of the very common symptoms associated with andropause. So andropause happens in men and menopause happens in women. But specifically depression, low or negative mood, irritability, which also includes anxiousness, nervousness, and even anger or temper. Memory issues are one of those things that we tend to just kind of brush off as being a part of aging, but memory or concentration loss or even dementia are not a normal part of the aging process. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. A lot of men complain about muscle loss or muscle fatigue or loss of stamina, situations where they just don't feel as strong. They actually feel kind of weak, that they're not able to perform the tasks that they used to. And sometimes that even gets into interrupting their ability to work. Fatigue, loss of energy. Of course, there's a component that some men experience with sex drive. Bone loss happens in men and women. Bone loss is one of those things that I think is very important to address because mobility and memory, as well as just feeling really innervated, is really important. But we also need to look at the risks associated with heart disease and metabolic syndrome. So let's get into those. So a healthy male makes these hormones on a daily basis. So hormone levels between men and women are that we all have the same kinds of hormones. We all have 3 estrogens. We all have progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol, thyroid, neurotransmitters, insulin, but we have them in much different ratios. And with those ratios, that makes not only men and women physically different, but it also changes cognitive issues, the way men think and the way they're able to perform tasks or multitask is a little bit different than women, and that's been scientifically studied. So I just threw up here some of the very typical daily hormone production. As you'll note, men make between 5 and 7 milligrams of testosterone every day, and peak testosterone production is between the ages of 18 and 25. So that tends to decrease with time, but you'll notice that that's probably really different than maybe testosterone replacement that you hear about on a regular basis. And I want to thank Dr. Jack Monaco for allowing me to use these numbers as he put this slide together originally. He's an amazing physician. He's back on the East Coast, I believe in New Jersey, and he started as a GYN and moved over to male health, and he absolutely loves it. And he's very good at it. There's a wide variety of medications that can very much interfere with not only testosterone levels, but then how other hormones are assimilated, specifically the statins, which we use for cholesterol, pain medications, which we use intermittently, or some people use chronically for chronic issues, antidepressants. And that's not just the newer generation antidepressants, but even the older ones as well. Blood pressure medications can interfere specifically with mood, depression, and issues with erectile dysfunction. Anti-inflammatory medications can definitely change the gut biome, but they can specifically interfere with the way we produce our natural painkiller hormones, but then also how we use our hormones. Stomach acid medications like famotidine, we used to use ranitidine, but that's off the market now, and cimetidine. So not necessarily specifically the PPIs like omeprazole, lansoprazole, which is, or brand names would be like Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium. So indirectly, these medications that we use for stomach acid issues can lower testosterone, and it's because they can affect our prolactin levels that's produced in the area of the pituitary. And then anti-seizure medications, which some of them are actually used for seizure disorder, but some of them are used for nerve pain. When we look at testosterone, there's a lot of questions that come up on a regular basis. And it's interesting because even our physicians tend to hear some bad news and then they focus in on that. And even if that bad news is overturned or newer science has actually shown that what was originally discovered is wrong, they tend to still focus on the negative. And I think it's because we have a very litigious society. If anything goes wrong at the doctor's office, prescription, surgery, whatever, the first thing people do is try to sue. Whereas that becomes kind of difficult for physicians to navigate. The other part of that is that whole other side of the system where people have to advocate for themselves. So a lot of times patients are learning more about their specific issues because number one, they live in their body and they live with these health concerns day in and day out. And quite frankly, years go by and we're just tired of dealing with this stuff. And when we go to the doctor doesn't necessarily always have the answers. And that happens with general issues like muscle aches. That can happen with more chronic issues like diabetes, cholesterol issues, high blood pressure, or even very serious issues like cancer. And I think most people who come in and ask questions have been dealing with their concerns for many, many years and have been through many doctors, and they're still showing up with a laundry list of symptoms and really not getting anywhere. That forces us to do our own investigation, our own homework. And then when we take the information to our doctors, we kind of get this kind of like, silicone wall or this blank stare of they don't want to hear what you have to say. They think that we're all a bunch of nutcases, that we've just been paying way too much attention to Dr. Google. And they don't have time to take a look at our information, which I find really upsetting because a lot of times we have newer information because we have the time to look and investigate. And perhaps instead of immediately putting up that wall of, I don't know how to help you and I'm not going to deal with this, I don't have time to listen, maybe just asking a few questions might actually be a little more advantageous. And maybe we could all learn something from this. So I very much appreciate it when people come in or they email me or they call and they've got questions about things. I'm happy to help with all of that. But the bottom line is testosterone does not cause prostate cancer. We have known that for 90 years, literally 90 years. There is no direct link between testosterone and prostate cancer. Now, there was a study produced probably 20 years ago now that their summary said that there was a link. But when you actually take a look at the patient pool that was used, that representation, those individuals already had so many illnesses and chronic illnesses. And when they gave testosterone to those individuals, some of them developed prostate cancer, some of their diabetes got worse, some of their cholesterol issues got worse, their cardiovascular issues got worse. They weren't evaluating true testosterone levels, and they weren't looking past testosterone either. So they weren't digging into the true physiology behind hormones. And I think that that's what can get us into a lot of trouble sometimes. So I think it's really important to know if you have low T, because no one should be running around with low testosterone levels. There's a ton of testing available. Not all testing modalities are the same, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about what testosterone replacement really is and what is best for you and your lifestyle. But the one statistic that I found in a study that I was reading is that by the time men are in their 70s, the study said that about 30 to 60% of those men in their 70s are hypogonadal, meaning they've already hit andropause. I think that number is much higher. In fact, when I was talking to a couple of hormone specialists, they tend to agree that really those numbers are probably anywhere from 50 to 90%, especially when men are in their 70s. That really the 30 to 60% is probably more of a representation of a man that's in his 40s, possibly 50s. We see a lot of men, even in their 20s, with low testosterone, and we have to be very careful about replacing testosterone when someone's that young, because if they want to father children, that's a very thin ice situation. We have to be very, very careful. But I love this book, Testosterone for Life. It's written by a physician. And the other one that I really like is called Hormone Replacement in Men. And from Dr. Stanton. And unfortunately, Dr. Stanton is no longer with us, but she wrote an amazing book. She summarized her 20 plus years of experience in men's health. And I wish her Godspeed. So testosterone functions in men. We can all think of the sex hormone ramifications. Sorry, I spelled sperm wrong there. Sorry about that. But it does aid in sperm development. It helps with erections and ejaculation. But it is also really important in the making of protein and also muscle formation. So not all protein is used as muscle formation. It can be used for blood vessels and blood cells and a wide variety of other tissues. Protein's really important. Testosterone helps to manufacture bone. It helps with mental concentration. It helps to control blood sugars. So when testosterone is optimal, we have really good blood sugar control. When we give too much testosterone or a supra-physiologic dose, blood sugars go up. Not enough testosterone, and we have huge fluctuations in blood sugar control. Also helps to regulate cholesterol. It is a very important part of the immune system, which, in having dealt with the last 15 months of the pandemic, this has become absolute forefront. And it actually helps protect the brain against Alzheimer's disease. So what I will say is that in some hospitals and in some larger geographic areas, we actually see men being treated with a little bit of testosterone if they have cognitive decline and elevated blood sugars. We give them a little tiny bit of testosterone, and that tends to decrease. In other words, they're clearer, they are more in the moment, their recall is much better, and their blood sugars come down. So these were some of the very specific medications that are directly associated and indirectly associated with low testosterone. If your cholesterol is too low, so let's talk about that for a second. So a lot of people are on cholesterol medications because your cholesterol was sitting at 200 or above, and now your cholesterol is 130, 140, 150, 160. That might be too low. And the reason why that's really important is because all hormones are derived from cholesterol. So if you don't make enough cholesterol, if you don't have enough cholesterol running around, you won't have enough hormones. I mean, that's just a basic physiology ramification. That is just physiology 101. That is the bottom line basics. But anytime we have metabolic syndrome, diabetes, prediabetes, as men age, their testosterone declines, in women as well. If there has been trauma to the testes or anywhere in the scrotum, that can be an issue. Infection and illness is always going to be a concern as well. A lot of these can be changed, they can be reversed, but we don't always have the opportunity to stop certain prescription medications. So with that, we have to be very careful. One area that we hear a lot of is that when we see testosterone change, we see hair loss. And I think this is one of the biggest concerns that men have. Although hair loss in men is more socially acceptable, I guess is how you'd put it, than in women. But women can lose their hair as well. And that can be linked to a genetic predisposition, diabetes, obesity, changes in thyroid, especially if you have a low functioning thyroid, then the body will slough its unnecessary parts, which hair is the first one to go. Very specific medications, although that list of medications is becoming longer and longer, can be directly related to hair loss. But then we also can use specific medications to help grow hair. So, and of course, stress. Oy, right? I mean, the last 15 months has been incredibly stressful on top of every other issue that's going on in your day-to-day life. So stress, as cortisol goes up, stress can affect blood glucose levels. It can increase sugar levels. It can decrease thyroid function, and we lose our hair. Lots of different treatments out there. I will say that if you do decide to use either an over-the-counter product or a prescription product, allow yourself about 9 months before you really determine if it's a good product for you, unless you are having significant side effects like really low blood pressure or irritability, changes that you're just not going to deal with. Some of our favorite things to compound specifically is minoxidil, and we compound anywhere from, oh my gosh, sometimes it's 2.5%, but we go all the way up to 10%. And sometimes we can couple it with other medications to reduce the inflammation around the hair bulb where the hair shaft is growing. And a lot of times we can use that in conjunction with other medications that we know will help grow hair. Now, some people have an autoimmune issue like alopecia that we have to use a little bit different tool in the toolbox, so to speak, because that can be an autoimmune issue that we have to look at from a different angle. But again, it can be helped, maybe not fully reversed. Autoimmune issues are difficult to fully reverse, but we can aid that. So latanoprost is usually used for glaucoma. It's an eye drop. But what's really cool is that we've noticed that people who use this specific eye drop, their eyelashes get really full and long. And sometimes their eyebrows grow as well, because sometimes the medication gets on their brow. We've also seen that when it is mixed with minoxidil, we see tremendous success in hair growth. Now, if you have been, if you've experienced some baldness over several years or decades, that might be a little bit more difficult to reverse, to see additional hair growth. And by the way, latanoprost can actually bleach the skin, so we have to be really careful. But we usually dispense it in a small amber bottle with a dropper. This dropper that I show in the picture isn't actually calibrated, but we do have some that have gradations on them, so you can actually measure how much to put on your scalp. It's usually used at bedtime, especially if we add tretinoin, because it can cause your scalp to become more sensitive to sunlight. And if you don't have a whole lot of hair there, that can cause redness, burning, irritation, and we don't want to enhance any specific issues that are related to skin cancer. The sun is nasty sometimes. I mean, my gosh, it's beautiful today, but it has its side effects, right? So if we have low T or hormone imbalance or diabetes or high blood pressure, a lot of times we can see risks due to those situations, and they can adversely affect our heart and heart conditions. That can also then lead to changes in other organs, changes in our blood flow to our legs and our feet, even our arms and our hands, and also specifically to our brain. So it's very important that we pay very close attention to our hormones. They're not just fun chemicals that are around for a few years so that We can be spry and young, and so are oats, so to speak. They play very important roles in overall health. And that happens not just when you're a young teenager, but all through your life. So it's very important to educate yourself, which again, I thank you again for being here tonight, because this is the first step in that, because knowledge is power. It gives you the opportunity to gather the information and make choices for yourself, what you are willing to do, what fits within your budget, and what fits within your lifestyle. I think that that's what's most important. But anytime that we can use mild exercise, I'm not asking anybody to, train for a marathon or an Ironman by any means, but move your body, because that will increase blood flow everywhere, including to your brain. That's going to help with mood. It's going to help with memory. Moving that blood throughout our body is going to help get blood all the way to our tippy toes, as well as circulating around so that the liver can help us detoxify, and the kidneys can help waste it, and the fecal material can help waste it as well. So these are a few things that you can change and a few things that you can't change. So you can't change the genes you were born with. You can't change time, because God willing, we have a tomorrow and we will be a day older. You can't necessarily change your gender. There are certain chromosomes that you are born with that no matter who you identify as, there is still a genetic predisposition to who you are, and those genes will determine your hormone levels. We can artificially change those to a degree, but we can't necessarily reverse the entire process. What you can change is you can change whether or not you smoke or chew tobacco. You can change your cholesterol levels. You can change your blood pressure, physical inactivity. You can change your weight. You can change your stress, and you can change your alcohol consumption. With all of those components, I'm not saying that any of it's easy, right? But the biggest thing I left off was you can control what you eat and what you drink. Because metabolism is energy. Metabolic syndrome is also classified as insulin resistance, which can lead to diabetes. So insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome is sometimes renamed as prediabetes. It can be changed with diet and exercise. Thyroid health and optimizing thyroid health will always change metabolism. Thyroid, which sits right here in your throat, right underneath your voice box, your Adam's apple, that is your master metabolic gland, and it's shaped like a butterfly. So it has two wings up on top, and they kind of come down in a small little section, a bridge in the middle. And is really important to maintain good thyroid health your entire life, because it will change everything from temperature to where you put weight on, what's going on with your brain, how your internal organs work. Even it can control whether or not you go to the bathroom, or whether or not you grow hair or nails, skin. Every single cell in the body not only has a thyroid receptor, it has a stress hormone receptor, which is called cortisol. Every single cell in your entire body. When we balance hormones, we see better energy levels, we see better metabolism. One of the biggest symptoms of hormone imbalance is listlessness, fatigue, change in muscle mass, change in body structure. And like this gentleman here, he has metabolic syndrome. Whether or not you sleep well plays an enormous role in all of the above. Studies have been shown that if you are a shift worker, if you actually work over the midnight hours when most people are asleep, it can change your metabolism. We have found that certain people even suffer from infertility by working shift work. but we can support that with nutrients and a very specific diet. Memory is one of those things that we joke about, we kid about. You know, you walk into a room and you're like, wait, why was I here? So you turn around, right? And you go out and you come back in and ha, 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 oh, it's just dementia or early Alzheimer's, that kind of thing. But the bottom line is that mild memory decline might be part of normal aging, but when we actually classify dementia and Alzheimer's, it's not. It really isn't. And it can be reversed. So we have seen in certain studies that even much older men, if given very small doses of testosterone, their memory returns. I mean, you can literally reverse it. We have seen that. But what we've also seen is that it's very important to keep in ratio with estrogens. So again, there are 3 estrogens in the body. Women just have different ratios of those. And that the biggest difference in memory, especially between men and women, is that women multitask better than men. That is a scientific reality. Whereas men like to do things one thing at a time. And usually if a woman tells her partner that she has a honey-do list, she hands those items out one at a time. Whereas a lot of times women can do 2 or 3, 4 things at the same time, talk on the phone, make dinner, and make sure that, Junior's getting their homework done. Not uncommon, but that is because a male brain is bathed in testosterone, whereas a female brain is bathed in estrogens. Now, when the estrogens are imbalanced with testosterone in men, we see more metabolic syndrome. So when I take a look at this guy, his estrogen is very high. His testosterone is probably super low, but we can test all of that. And why that's important to know is because we can't reverse this issue unless we know what all those components are, what all those values are. We've been looking at memory loss and testosterone for over 30 years. This isn't new. Testosterone levels are highest in men between 18 and 25. And with that, there's just a very slow decline in testosterone levels. So there's this other component called sex hormone binding globulin. So that's what that SHBG is. So if you will, SHBG is like a car. So the hormones get in the car and they float down the river of your bloodstream, and they're going to stop at the target tissues, organs, brain, vessels, whatever, and open the doors and the hormones come out. Well, the reason why SHBG is very important is because if the hormones are bound to that molecule, if they're actually in the seats of that car, they're not available to the target tissues. In other words, they're not active. So when estrogen goes up, so this guy having a lot of estrogen, he's going to make a lot more sex hormone binding globulin, which means a lot more hormone is going to be bound and his testosterone is going to be low. That's really important because there are certain estrogens that are directly linked to cancers, not necessarily testosterone, but definitely estrone, which is the strongest of all of the 3 estrogens. And we have known that since the beginning of time. This is not new science. I'm sorry if you're hearing that from a pharmacist to begin with, but that is my specialty, is hormones and drugs. We can change those levels. We can manipulate how testosterone is converted to estrogen. We can manipulate how long estrogens stay in the body. And we can also change sex hormone binding globulin. But anytime estrogen goes up and sex hormone binding globulin goes up, testosterone will go down, and that increases the risks of metabolic syndrome and as well as memory loss. So sexual health is a very important topic for a lot of reasons, but Even my husband doesn't talk about it with his buddies on the golf course. I mean, probably in passing and definitely joking around about things, but when it comes to real symptoms, they don't really talk about it. Women talk about it all the time, all the time. So a lot of times women actually come into the pharmacy to ask if I can talk to their spouse. And I'm happy to do that. And if you're comfortable talking to a female about that, I'm more than happy to chat with you. Because when it comes to being a well-rounded, healthy person, there's three things that we know that we need. We need shelter, we need food, and we need intimacy. So we need that ability to connect. And that's the whole point of finding a partner in life and being together. So if that is the pathway that you choose in finding that connectivity, we want to keep that relationship as healthy as possible. And I will say that hormone changes are probably the biggest reason why people get divorced. And we see that a lot. What the highest divorce rate happens in the 40s, when people hit their 40s. And that's when hormones are hugely fluctuating, especially in women, but certainly in men as well. And usually sex drive is the first thing to drop off. So how do you repair that? Well, I think it's really important to measure. Replacing testosterone doesn't necessarily mean that your libido is going to come back. We definitely need to look at thyroid function. We have to look at cortisol. We've got to look at estrogen, because if your estrogen's high and your testosterone's low, we don't necessarily want to just throw testosterone at you, because your estrogen's going to get even higher. And even though we're giving you testosterone, that can actually set you up for your prostate to enlarge and literally your libido to go down, your sexual desire to go down. And you're more likely to eat dinner and then just lay down on the couch and fall asleep, and then, eventually wander up to bed, and, nothing's going to happen in the bedroom. Nothing's going to happen on the couch. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But we have to be measuring these components to know, because you don't have to look like that gentleman in the previous slide to have hormone imbalance. In fact, there's a lot of very slightly built men that have high estrogen levels, but I've heard doctor after doctor after doctor saying, well, he doesn't have man boobs and he doesn't have a big beer gut, so therefore his estrogen's got to be fine. And to that I say, if you don't measure, you're guessing. And when you guess, you get in trouble. Nobody wants to have an enlarged prostate. Everybody wants to pee, and pee well. You don't want to get up 10 times at night. And you want to feel, when you do urinate, you want to feel that you're completely voiding the bladder, so that everything empties out of the bladder. And that's important, because we don't want to have kind of a pool left behind where bacteria, virus, and fungus can grow. That can cause serious problems, like changes in mood, changes in cognition. I mean, even if people walk around with urinary tract infections, it can leave the bladder and get into the bloodstream. It can leave the bladder and get into into other parts of the body, and it doesn't belong there, but it can be very serious. And of course, metabolic syndrome, that's the incidence of metabolic syndrome is definitely on the rise. And when metabolic syndrome goes up, when somebody's pre-diabetic, they're obese, then their ability to perform and even their desire to perform decreases. So with erectile dysfunction, there's a lot of medications that can happen, that can help. But erectile dysfunction can happen at any age. If somebody is diagnosed with high blood pressure in their 20s or 30s, certain medications can actually decrease a man's ability to get a full erection, let alone maintain that erection and fully ejaculate. That happens with a wide variety of traditional medications that are used throughout life. And when we start adding medications, 2-3 blood pressure medications, a diuretic, a few other things going on, maybe something for aches and pains or nerve damage, those can compound and just make things even worse. So I've listed some of the most common products that are used. Sildenafil is Viagra. It's available in a commercially available tablet. We make a rapid dissolve, which is quick acting. It can also be chewed, so it can be, it can work very quickly. You don't have to wait 10, 15 minutes. Same thing with tadalafil. We do that as well. And then Trimix is an injectable, and I guess there's actually a Bimix, which is 2 of the 3 medications, but those are the 3 medications that are involved in a Trimix. And that has to be made at a very special pharmacy that under very tight restrictions can make injectable medications. And they need to be tested and they need to be proven sterile. And then you literally get a little vial and you draw it up, and then that small amount is usually injected with like an insulin needle at the base of the penis. And that helps to change the blood flow so that the blood can be trapped in the penis and maintain engorgement. And of course, there are pumps and a wide variety of devices that can help with erectile dysfunction. So this is kind of like, well, what do we talk about nail fungus when it comes to men's health? The reason why I threw this in here is because a lot of men have nail fungus either on their toes or their fingers. And that can be a situation where they might also have metabolic syndrome, because fungus will grow and proliferate in a situation where blood sugar levels are high. They feed off of that. So we see more issues with cracked brittle nails, but also thickening and yellowing where we see an actual fungal infection. There's several treatments available for nail fungus. The oral medications can cause liver damage, so liver function blood tests need to be done. We actually make a topical nail paint that has 3 different medications in it that's very successful. But you do need to be realistic in that it takes 6 to 9 months for that nail to grow out, where you're going to actually notice some improvement, because nails are very slow to grow, especially when they are infected, or you have underlying issues like metabolic syndrome. Chronic pain, very important. Pain is an issue that is suffered at any age and throughout life. Sometimes we see more pain because people aren't in super great shape, and they go out on a weekend and they go for a ski trip with their buddies, or they're playing, 10 rounds of golf in 3 days. Those are really important areas to look at. And whether it's an overuse syndrome, where just like a weekend warrior, you're just kind of really powering through. Maybe you're rebuilding your deck, which a lot of people did home improvement projects this last year. And we saw a huge increase in people calling and asking what to do about sore muscles or even chronic pain. So it works really well to identify what's going on and share that information. But chronic pain can actually change with, or I should say, the perception of chronic pain can change with hormone imbalance. In other words, if your hormones are not optimized, you feel pain sooner and longer. We use magnesium a lot as a muscle relaxant. It works fabulous. Turmeric is amazing. You do need to take turmeric. It's not just a dietary supplement. That's the thing. So you have to be very careful about the quality that you buy. You don't have to take black pepper with turmeric. You don't necessarily have to do that. Boswellia is amazing. I love Boswellia. It is an herbal medication that we don't necessarily use as often as I'd like to, but in certain situations, it's great. So combined with all of these, that is really helpful as well. And I listed digestive enzymes. So we use digestive enzymes to break down our foods, proteins, carbohydrates, and our fats. But digestive enzymes are also used in between meals to help decrease inflammation and pain, which is super cool. Digestive enzymes can also be out of balance, which can then throw off digestive health, which can then change the way our hormones are circulated throughout our body. Let's take a minute and talk about hormone replacement, specifically testosterone replacement. And I'm going to see if I can pull up any questions in the chat. Am I going way too fast here?
There was one question,
Yes.
Michelle, about a patient who just started using LDN for tinnitus, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
asked if it's normal for symptoms to get worse before they get better. And he said he would call if this is not the right form to address that question, but I'm sure that you would love to address LDN.
So LDN is, I mean, it's applicable everywhere. So for tinnitus can actually be a hormone imbalance, quite honestly. We used to use aldosterone, which is a metabolite of cortisol. We used to use aldosterone very effectively for tinnitus. Tinnitus can be a process in the cochlea, so the kind of snail shell area of the inner ear. There's little hairs in there, and there's little beads that help figure out, if we're upright or sideways. But that's also where we determine sound, pressure, and movement. And with that, tinnitus can happen because of low hormones. And we have seen even testosterone replacement help tinnitus, not always, but sometimes. Tinnitus can also be as a result of an autoimmune disorder. But the use of low dose naltrexone is very helpful because it not only reduces inflammation, which if there is a physical inflammatory component to tinnitus, then that is reduced. The biggest issue is that the inner ear is not very vascular. In other words, it doesn't have a lot of blood supply. So that's why it takes a little bit longer for it to kind of kick in. Now, when we use low dose naltrexone, some people complain that they get worse before they get better. And the reason is because your immune system, which low dose naltrexone modulates the immune system as well, your immune system works on everything 100% of the time, 24/7, 365. So it doesn't just look at this chronic pain issue, this nerve damage over here, tinnitus, blood sugar levels. It doesn't separate those out and just work on one at a time. It literally looks at everything. So let's say you've got 5 issues that are going on, and low dose, and your immune system is going to try to tackle all 5 of those things. When we use low dose naltrexone, usually certain areas decrease and we no longer have those problems. So if we have 5 things, that means that 20% of the immune system is going to be able to work on each one of the 5 things, right? 20, 40, 60, 80, 100%. Now, when we use low dose naltrexone, if we can resolve one of the issues, now the immune system only has to work at 4 areas, 25, 25, 25, 25, right? So that's how, with that immune system spread super thin and now it's able to concentrate, that's how issues can become uncovered. And as infection dies off or natural death of cells happens, toxins can be released, and that's where you feel symptoms. So LDN isn't causing that. It's actually modulating your immune system, which is causing it to function more efficiently to help resolve the issues. Because your immune system is going to try to take care of everything so that you can be healthy, because all of these inflammatory issues are not necessarily normal. So it's going to go after them. We do know that when testosterone is optimized and estrogen is optimized, sex hormone binding globulin is optimized, we see less inflammation. We see less muscle issues. We see less autoimmune conditions. It makes perfect sense for this to be optimized. I hope that answers the question. It was kind of a roundabout way, but I hope that solved that. So with testosterone replacement, there's a lot of different ways to put a little testosterone back. The typical dose of physiologic dosing is between 5 and 10 milligrams a day. However, we see much bigger doses being used. And when we get into those great big doses, that's where we can get into trouble. Anytime we're replacing, we still have to monitor, usually every 6 to 12 months, and do a full panel of testing. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So testosterone replacement can be done by injectables, and those injectables are put into the muscle. And that's usually done once a week or once a month, or even once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. And those work very well. When the dose goes in, it's in, you can't pull it back out. And you put it in, and then you get this peak, and then with time it wears off before your next dose. So you have a little bit of a roller coaster ride. It also hurts. I mean, you're putting a half to a full cc of an oil-based hormone into the muscle. That's going to hurt. There's also topical patches that are commercially available, and they're usually applied once a week. There's also topical gels. So the last time I looked, Androgel was in a little foil packet, and it had about a teaspoonful of gel. Now, I should have gotten my measuring spoons out and shown you what a teaspoon of gel is and how you're going to apply that. So this is the other thing, and I apologize, I'm not trying to be rude, but guys usually rub things in like this. Honestly, I mean, it's like, 2 or 3 swipes and you're good to go. Whereas women are used to rubbing creams in quite a bit, so we tend to rub them in a little bit longer. But if you don't fully rub in your gel or cream, then it either gets stuck on your clothing, or you transfer it to the dog or the cat, or hopefully not your kids or your spouse, but that can happen. And then you're actually transferring hormone to people who probably don't need it. You can actually get it back from the dog, but you don't want the dog to lick it and then take it into their body as well. So where we put the cream or gel is really important, because testosterone will not stay as testosterone in the body for very long. It is immediately converted to either other forms of testosterone or onto estrogens. So it doesn't stay that way. When someone converts too quickly to estrogens, we can actually use herbal medications to help stop that, or change the way the estrogens are utilized in the body. We can use a sublingual troche, which is usually like a little disc or a square, and that's put underneath the tongue, and that's slowly dissolved. Or dermal pellets. So some doctors actually will place pellets under the skin, and they're placed and left there for about 3 months. And usually there's anywhere from 5 to a dozen pellets put in the skin. And that's a specific dose, and you're stuck with that dose until that wears off, until those pellets release the rest of their medication and or dissolve. And even though they're replaced every 3 months, that doesn't mean that they are completely used up in that 3-month period of time. Dermal pellets have to be inserted by a physician. And again, that can be a little bit painful. But again, if we don't test, then we don't know what dose to use. And if we don't know what's going on with estrogens and sex hormone binding globulin, then, or even testosterone metabolites, we can be running into other healthcare risks. Now, low T can cause just as high a risk of cardiovascular decline, diabetes decline, bone health decline, memory decline, as much, if not worse, if you have too much testosterone and or estrogens. So it's really important that when we're evaluating risks with cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, that we evaluate the entire picture, because if we don't, we're going to miss out, and we don't want anybody 20 years down the road to have more health concerns. That isn't the goal. So how do we test? Well, we can look at hormones in saliva, we can look at them in blood, and we can look at them in urine testing. If you are using topical hormone, It is best to use saliva testing. Blood testing is the gold standard that most physicians will order and require. That's what insurance companies usually require as well. But like I said earlier, testosterone doesn't stay as testosterone. So measuring it in the blood is going to be very difficult. If you're using topical hormone, we also don't see hormone in the blood. We see it captured by sex hormone binding globulin. It's shoved in the car and it's whisked away to the target tissues. But the salivary pool, the fluid in the salivary glands, is a direct correlation to how much hormone is actually in the cells. So it's always, and it's easy to do. It's not very expensive. And when we look at salivary testing, we can look at a ton of things all the way around. So I think that is fabulous. So we can look at estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. We can look at cortisol in the morning, at night. That's $200. If we look at hormone metabolites in the urine, that runs around $300. I have no idea what blood testing is normally. We don't do a lot of that. We do blood spot testing, which is primarily, we can definitely look at hormones in that, but it's primarily thyroid. So tonight I want to announce that ZRT Labs, which is the lab that is shown here, was gracious enough to give us a hormone test kit. And I want to say that Michael Hamakoa won tonight's raffle. So thank you very much. And Michael, we will reach out to you and talk to you about the test. And if that's something you'd like to pursue, we'll move forward with that. So congratulations. That's really exciting. And I want to thank ZRT Labs for their generosity. Yeah, that's a $200 kit. That's pretty cool. When we are looking at hormones, we also need to evaluate other issues. So if we are looking at serum testing, we can look at a complete blood chemistry. We can also look at PSA and albumin, as well as hormones and their metabolites. And it's really important to look at the entire picture. A lot of physicians are not used to drawing all of these labs at one time. But the reason why it's important is because if you just look at total and free testosterone, you don't know what you're actually metabolizing it to, or how, or when. And perhaps it's actually a deficiency in another area that is causing your testosterone to be off to begin with. And let's say that your total and free T are low, but your estrogen is high. We, again, don't want to set you up for prostate cancer, breast cancer. We don't want your bones to become brittle, and we want you to have full memory and full cognition all of your life. Albumin is really important because that gives us a historical look at diet and how well the body is assimilating proteins, etc. But when we look at PSA, we also don't want to say, oh, your PSA is below 4, you are good to go. Well, what if it's 2 this time? But last time, 6 months ago, maybe even a year ago when it was tested, it was only a 1. So it's actually doubled in the last little bit of time. Well, that should be a little bit of a concern. No, you're still within normal range, no problem. But why did it jump? Why did it double? Well, that could very well be because of dihydrotestosterone, which is DHT. It could be due to too much estrogens. It could be because estrogens are high, sex hormone binding globulin's high, and T is low. It could be because stress hormone. It could be because of a lot of things. Maybe there's an infection. We don't know. But if we don't look and we don't test and we don't know and we're guessing, and that is, I don't guess when it comes to health. That's just not smart. Important to support all of these systems with Vitamins and minerals, amino acids. We can test micronutrients to ensure that you methylate appropriately, that you change your B vitamins appropriately. B6, very core B vitamin that is necessary to convert so many hormones to their active components, but also change from your sleepy to happy, which is changing from tryptophan to serotonin. That's just one little vitamin. Magnesium is really important in over 400 chemical reactions in the body. Our heart doesn't contract appropriately if our magnesium levels are off. So what kind of magnesium? There's several. I love magnesium glycinate because it also helps to soothe the inner lining of the intestinal tract. Magnesium taurate is also really good for cardiovascular health. But when you use magnesium oxide or magnesium chloride, we see a lot more side effects like diarrhea. Nobody wants that. No, no, no. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. We have to have enough vitamin D. So how much is enough? Well, the last studies that I looked at is that the people in the Pacific Northwest with this latitude that circles the globe, we need about 8,900 international units to maintain a decent blood level. Now that's on average. And I think it's because a lot of us are Northern European descent and we don't assimilate vitamin D very well. We don't store it very well. So it's really important to have your vitamin D level tested. I personally look at it in March and again in either September or October. And I look at it in March because I'm hoping my level's high enough so that maybe I can back off a little bit coming into the summer months, go outside, get some fresh natural vitamin D. And if you really want to store up on your natural vitamin D, the best thing to do is to go outside, lift your shirt and expose your tummy to the sun for about 15 to 20 minutes because the liver sits right there and it will start producing and the production of vitamin D and help move it around your body. Otherwise, vitamin D is available in capsules. It's available in drops. There's a lot of different ways of vitamin D can be used. The prescription vitamin D is not as potent as what you can get over the counter. I know that sounds really backwards, but that's the truth. And you can do very well buying over the counter vitamin D. Your blood level, optimal blood level is over 60 to 70. So normal range is between 30 and 100. But if you want full benefit of vitamin D for hormone optimization, but also cardiovascular health, mood, memory, bone, as well as immunity, we need to see those numbers 60, 70 or higher. We also have seen that those vitamin D levels that are 60, 70 or above, we see less cancer incidence as well. Omegas. Okay, we eat a lot of omega-6. So we see that a lot in saturated fats, a lot of fried foods, pre-prepared foods, boxed foods, canned food, frozen foods. There's a lot of omega-6. So you really want to concentrate on the 3s and 9s. And you can find that in some really great products. Again, there's a lot of really good tasting liquids. There's a lot of capsules that come from deep sea fishes that have been thoroughly screened to remove any heavy metals. That's really important because you don't want to take a product that is going to harm you down the line. Nobody needs heavy metal toxicity. That's not what, that just seems counterproductive. We need a little bit of zinc. Zinc is really foundational in not only the production of testosterone, but the utilization of testosterone throughout the body. Zinc is very formative for our immune system as well. But if you take zinc, if you take 15 milligrams of zinc, you want to add 1 milligram of copper because zinc deficiency can be a problem, but zinc overdose or overutilization of zinc can actually waste copper in our bloodstream. And with that, we can cause an anemia that is not healthy and isn't necessarily reversible. So if you had a major trauma, that could be a problem. You could literally, it's not really a thinning of the blood, but it changes the way the platelets aggregate and how they stick together. When we look at prostate support, saw palmetto is a #1 key ingredient, helps to reduce the inflammation of the prostate, but also to enhance blood flow. Pumpkin seed extract and nettle are also very important. And this is actually our brand of prostate support. It is really nice, soft gel. It's very easy to swallow. It doesn't usually get stuck, and it's a really decent dose of all of the above. And this is how you can order that online. Scarlett, did I see a couple more questions pop up?
The only question that we got was, do you offer blood testing for analysis of vitamin D? And then I dropped the link to order those supplements you were talking about online as well.
Thank you. That's perfect. We do a vitamin D blood spot test. It is a kit from ZRT, and you literally comes complete with a little lancet. You clean your finger, you poke the side of your finger, you put the blood in the little circles, you send it off to the lab. Results come back in about a week. That is $75. So, I asked for a blood test in March, and the lab, so I have Kaiser. They wanted $160 for a blood draw for vitamin D evaluation. What? And I'm hearing that it's not covered by Medicare very often. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So at the end of the day, what can you do? What can you do literally tonight or tomorrow? So there isn't a perfect drug for everything that ails us, especially for those that have, for those of us that experience health issues that come a little bit later in life. But what you can do every single day is you can look at proper nutrition. And what I mean by that is that, in my professional opinion, gluten is a bad thing. I think gluten is probably the biggest downfall to American civilization. We need to ensure that we have not only that we're gluten-free, but we have to be very careful about the other sensitivities, because it doesn't make any sense to inundate your body and ask it to work on these toxins and these products that we continue to throw at it to cause allergic reactions, or to stress out our stressor hormones, our adrenals. Because if our cortisol is up and our adrenal glands are busy fighting the junk that we're throwing in our bodies, then our hormones go down. Exercise, move your body. It doesn't have to be an Ironman. It doesn't have to be a triathlon. Just move your body. And it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. Go for a walk, put in a couple miles. That might take an hour or two, but move your body, because as we move, whether it's yoga, Pilates, running, rowing, swimming, we are actually moving our blood around. And as we move our blood around, we are eliminating pockets of toxins. We're eliminating pockets of infection. We are eliminating opportunities for metabolic syndrome. So a little bit of exercise will not only lower your blood pressure, it'll lower your blood sugars, it'll lower your cholesterol. A little bit of hormone balance will do that as well. But one thing at a time, right? So optimal hormone health, we can test for that. Optimal vitamin and nutrient health, we can test for that too. Micronutrient testing is a thing. It's super easy. It is a blood draw. We can also help with that. The proper nutrition, there are some amazing books out there. Two of my favorites, I'm sorry I didn't list those. I should have done that. Two of my favorites, Wheat Belly, written by Dr. William Davis, I think it is. Is that right? And the other one is called Grain Brain. And Grain Brain is written by Dr. Perlmutter. Those are really, really good books. They just help to understand what gluten really does to our bodies. There are some areas that you can use to help prevent problems related to andropause, whether they're memory loss, bone issues, muscle mass decline, a wide variety of other things. No matter what, as we age, we're going to see hormonal decline, but it doesn't have to stay down there. And I will say that you hire your doctors, you hire your medical practitioners. And if you are wanting to follow a pathway that you believe is going to be best for your optimal health, and your physician or your medical practitioner is not on that same pathway, then you have a choice. You hired them. They don't own you. You perhaps can make a choice and find someone who better suits your needs or aligns better with your goals. Moderate your alcohol consumption. Beer is very estrogenic. We have to be careful about that. But anytime that you overindulge in anything, right? Sugar, alcohol, anything, it's too much. Moderation really is the key to life. Sources of stress. Oh, that is something that everybody struggles with every single day. And we put on a pretty nice facade. But when it comes to dealing with stress, we all deal with it a little bit differently. Prayer and meditation, quiet time, whether it's outside by the ocean, sitting in the bathtub, just having some time where you can breathe slowly and just let it go. Some people need to be taught how to meditate or taught how to pray, and that's okay. We have a list of really amazing practitioners that can literally teach you over Zoom. It's pretty cool. You can also look at, there's some YouTube videos out there with different types of yoga that is super cool to help alleviate a lot of that stress, but also help build muscle and bone at the same time. As you move your body and stay active, you're going to enhance bone health and muscle health, because as you move your muscles and your ligaments, that pulls on the bone and helps stimulate bone growth. Sleep. Oh, that's a tough one for a lot of people. Even if you use melatonin, some people are like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because your hormones are not balanced. Melatonin is a hormone. Melatonin works very well with vitamin D. They almost go hand in hand. But you also need to look at your magnesium and add a little bit of that in there as well. And L-theanine is a natural amino acid that I love to help reduce stress and help with sleep. You can use it even if you're on an antidepressant. I will caution you though, there are some medications over the counter that are used for mood to help decrease stress that contain GABA, G-A-B-A. And if you're on an antidepressant, no, because GABA will reverse the antidepressant and literally send you into orbit. It makes you wired and you feel terrible. So don't do that. Just look for the product L-theanine, T-H-E-A-N-I-N-E. You can shop it on our website as well. Fabulous product to help reduce stress and help us sleep and get your hormones checked. Thank you very, very much for being here tonight. Our next class is on the 15th of July, and we're going to be talking about dermatology. And again, you can register on our website right there. And we're going to talk about all kinds of really cool areas of dermatology and how we can try to fix that.